Please rise.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rippling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Good morning. I am Rabbi Clifford Colwyn of Temple B'nai Abraham. We have called this gathering a solemn observance of mourning and outrage. We believe the four words precisely convey the horror of this moment. Solemn, this is an utterly somber moment. Observance, a ceremony that is meaningful but not joyous. Mourning, we are in mourning. Outraged, we are outraged. Temple B'nai Abraham and the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West welcome you. We hope that by our coming together as a Kehillah Kedoshah, a holy community, we find solace as we join in our mourning and a sense of purpose as we unite in our outrage. Last week, Mark Wilf, a member of the community known by so many of us, became chair of the board of the Jewish Federations of North America. It is perhaps the most important voluntary position in American Jewish life, with enormous responsibilities. Tragically, yesterday, those responsibilities became far more serious and far more grave. Mark, we are honored that you made a point of being here this morning.
Good morning. Honored guests, Governor Murphy, rabbis, dear friends. Our hearts break for the families of those killed and injured at the Tree of Life Synagogue and for the entire Jewish community of Pittsburgh. Our congregations are a place for inspiration, spirituality, and community. It is simply horrifying for Jewish people to be targeted during worship on a Sabbath morning. The peace of the Shabbat was shattered by hate and anti-Semitism. We are very appreciative of the quick response of the local law enforcement personnel. Their bravery and courage saved many lives. We at the Jewish Federations of North America stand side by side in supporting the Pittsburgh community. We have deployed our top experts from our secure community network to Pittsburgh to support their community security efforts. Later this afternoon, I will go join the Pittsburgh community in honoring those that have lost their lives so tragically. All of our Federation communities will be coordinating community-wide gatherings in the coming week. We must continue to vigilantly fight hatred, anti-Semitism, and bigotry wherever and whenever we see it in any way we can. No amount of hate or violence will deter us from the covenantal mission of Abraham and Sarah to be a unified nation of tzedakah and chesed, a people of kindness and goodness. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. May the memories of the victims of yesterday's awful tragedy be a blessing. Thank you.
Dov Ben Shimon became Executive Vice President, CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West 4 years ago last month. And in that time, he has energized and reinvigorated our community with his creativity, his intellect, his compassion, and his utter commitment to Jewish life. We Jews who live in this part of New Jersey could not have a more dedicated leader. Dov?
Governor Murphy, honored guests, rabbis, teachers, and dear friends. I am so sorry to be standing here in front of you today. This is not what we should be doing in our synagogues and communities. But we are honored to welcome dignitaries and special guests from our community. Governor Murphy, Governor Cody, Mark Wilf, Chairman of the Board of JFNA, Congressman Leonard Lance, Congressman Cedric Richmond, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Essex County Freeholders Gill, Siebold, Mercado, Pomares, and Bauer, Livingston Mayor Meinhardt, Livingston Deputy Mayor Anthony, West Orange Mayor Parisi, Essex County Executive Joe DiVincenzo, Director of New Jersey Homeland Security Jared Maples, Galit Peleg from the Israeli Consulate in New York and New Jersey, Tom Pierre, President of the Oranges and Maplewood NAACP, Livingston Council members Klein and Fernandez, candidates for Congress from New Jersey's 11th Congressional District, Mikey Sherrill and Jay Weber, candidate for Congress from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, Tom Malinowski, and our community rabbis Tobin, Danowitz, Michelle, Klibanoff, Silverstein, Friedman, Zwickler, and Tillman. And I deeply apologize if I missed anybody out. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to us that you are here today. We were grateful to receive via the consulate last night the following message from Prime Minister Netanyahu. He says, "I was heartbroken and appalled by the murderous attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue. The entire people of Israel grieve with the families of the dead. We stand together with the Jewish community of Pittsburgh. We stand together with the American people in the face of this horrendous anti-Semitic brutality. And we all pray for the speedy recovery of the wounded." From Prime Minister Netanyahu. My dear friends, as you can hear from my accent, I was not born in this country. I chose to come here. I love this country. I love what it stands for and what it represents. And even when it falls short, as all things we create do occasionally, I love it because it is my home. So I stand before you today as a worried father and as a troubled member of our community. But I also stand before you as the CEO of our Jewish Federation. And you should know what our response has been to this awful attack yesterday and to the cloud of evil that it represents. We denounce hatred, bigotry, racism, and anti-Semitism. We urge our community to act to set an example for openness, tolerance, qualities that are an essential part of our identity and our community. Here in New Jersey, our ability to live in mutual harmony, neighbors from a multitude of religious and ethnic backgrounds, is a blessing that enriches all of our lives. Let me tell you for just one moment what Federation is doing right now in response to the current situation. We have deepened further our emergency communications platform, alerting the community about threats to safety and quickly sending out alerts and alarms. We're coordinating with state, federal, and local police, Homeland Security, and others to increase training, patrols, and awareness drills to keep our schools, synagogues, JCCs, and institutions safe and secure. We are continuing to lobby in DC and Trenton for more security funding for our synagogues and buildings and agencies. We know that Jews are still, in this country, the most targeted victims of religious hate crimes. And we know that it is our obligation and commitment to speak up. Just a week ago, 500 members of our Greater Metro West community stood together in solidarity and unity at Yad Vashem. And how grateful we were, Governor Murphy, that you too stood there in solidarity last week. We stood and cried and wondered at the depths of evil and depravity that people can commit. And we saw in our visit what the answers to such hatred and wickedness should be: solidarity and preparedness. Pittsburgh is us. Their community looks like us. It feels like home. So our response is the same response. We are all responsible one for another. And strong, resilient communities do not give up in the face of terror. They do more. In Hebrew, we say mitzvah goreret mitzvah. The answer to hate is more good deeds, more teaching, more community building, more showing up. That's not just good theology, it's good sociology, because actions speak louder than words. We build resilient, strong community life by working even harder on tzedakah, chesed, and tikkun olam, restoring balance to society by actively helping those in need, caring with compassion, and repairing the world. These are American values. They are Jewish values. And they are the values and work of our community and our federation day in and day out. Not to tear each other down, but to stand stronger in the face of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. We build community because there is no better promise for the future than building it together. Thank you.
When our own Shabbat morning service in this very space ended yesterday, I entered the lobby to find our facilities director, Tracy Bent, waiting for me. I had an experience I suspect other rabbis in the room did as well. He told me what had happened in Pittsburgh. He motioned outside to where it was clear the Livingston police had already established a considerable presence. Stunned, I walked to my office and picked up the phone to read the latest news, and I found a text from Phil Murphy with words of mourning and outrage. I texted back my thanks, and then I texted, "How about coming here tomorrow morning to be with the Jewish community?" In seconds, he responded, "Yes, of course." Governor, with sadness, we are honored to have you here this morning.
Thank you all. Rabbi, thank you in particular for bringing us together this morning, though we certainly wish it were under very different circumstances. I thank you and Robin and the whole congregation here for your support and friendship. To the other rabbis and faith leaders in particular, I'm honored and we're honored to be with you. Dov, thank you for your words and for your leadership. It's hard to believe that we were hanging out just a few days ago in both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and here we are together. And Mark and Tammy and I sat beside Mark and Jane a few days ago in Tel Aviv, and it's hard to believe that we are here based on this awful experience. To all the VIPs and dignitaries, to each and every one of you, God bless you and thank you for coming, and good morning. And I want to reiterate the two members of my administration, senior members who are here today, Homeland Security Director Jared Naples and Superintendent of the State Police, Colonel Pat Callahan. I join you with a heavy heart, but while I mourn for the 11 precious lives snuffed out barely 24 hours ago in the worst act of terror against the Jewish community in the history of our country, I'm also finding my heart firming ever more in our shared resolve to root out the evil of hate and cast it forever out of our world. Yesterday, the Jewish community in Pittsburgh, in particular in the iconic Squirrel Hill neighborhood, came under attack by hate. This hate is not new. We have seen too much of it here in our communities over the past 18 months. Slurs and symbols, in many cases broadcasted in spray paint. Paint, however, washes away. Ignorance is indelible. So too is the grief that we feel for the families gathering on the Sabbath, many for a bris, I might add, broken apart in cold blood. In a synagogue family, by the way, that dates back to the 1860s in Pittsburgh. We cannot easily wash away the feelings of anger and indignance that the lessons of history continue to fall upon deaf ears, even in this country, nor frankly should we. We cannot allow the act of this gunman to be viewed as just an isolated incident in a city hours away. We cannot allow him to be pushed aside as just an outcast. We cannot ignore the uncomfortable fact that anti-Semitism is on the rise, not just in Europe, but also in this nation. I have lived in Germany twice. I was there last week before Israel. I'm a student of its history and an observer of its present. The anti-Semitic history in Europe is deep and born over centuries, long before the Holocaust. Indeed, we laid my father-in-law to rest earlier this week. His ancestors, German and Polish roots, fled from the pogroms in the 19th century to America. And the here and now in Europe is troubling. The history and the present there have jarring lessons and similarities to what we are seeing in our own country. According to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitic incidents rose nearly 60% across our nation in 2017. And here in New Jersey, even with one of the nation's largest and most deeply rooted and proud Jewish communities, reports of anti-Semitism rose by nearly 1/3 from 2016 to 2017. We must find the courage, even through tears and heartbreak, to stop and reverse this trend. We cannot allow the normalization of hate. As the late Elie Wiesel once observed, a destruction and annihilation that only man can provoke, only man can prevent. And prevent it we must. We must prevent it by ensuring that no one who harbors the desire to inflict harm and terror on our communities has access to guns. These are our laws, and we will enforce them. And we're already looking at potentially more laws to make what is already the safest gun safety state in America even safer. I might add, we have to look, as Doug alluded to, we have to look long and hard and more deeply at the amount of money we're spending to protect synagogues and federations and private schools where our young fellow citizens worship. And we must prevent this awfulness by speaking out. We must do this together as New Jerseyans, Jews and Christians and Muslims of all faith, everyone of every faith and of every nationality. We must challenge hate wherever it lurks, whether it be in a distant city or in our own neighborhood. We must challenge hate wherever it is spoken, even if by the highest powers in this country. We must not be afraid. Last Tuesday, and Dov alluded to this, during our trip to Israel, Tammy and I had the solemn privilege to lay a wreath at Yad Vashem in memory of the 6 million European Jews senselessly murdered during the Holocaust. It was our 6th visit to Israel in the past 4 years. It was certainly not our first to Yad Vashem, but it was our first official visit as governor. We sat, by the way, shortly thereafter with the Prime Minister privately. Little did we know that not even a week later, we would be overwhelmed with the news that American Jews were senselessly murdered in their own sanctuary by a man who possessed the same hateful thoughts as those who devised and carried out the Holocaust. We have a responsibility as Americans, let alone as men and women of faith, to ensure that the right of religious liberty upon which our nation rests is never, ever compromised. That may seem hard right now. At times like these, our faith may be tested. But I, and I know many of us here, are optimists. I know it is at times like these when our faith is actually at its strongest. Let us remind ourselves with the words of no one less than an American president, in this case, George Washington, who wrote to the congregants of Newport, Rhode Island's Touro Synagogue in 1790. And I quote the president, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." And so I say with humility to you, do not be afraid. The people of New Jersey are with you. I am with you. Our entire administration is with you. No act of hate will go unpunished. Today we pray for the 11 lives lost and for the recovery of those who survived, including, and we must say this, 4 members of the Pittsburgh law enforcement community wounded, showing extraordinary bravery in the line of duty. I'm not sure if you had the chance to listen to the dispatch tapes, but the presence of mind and the calmness, Colonel, of your colleagues in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania was extraordinary. And through our prayers, we recommit ourselves to creating a state and a nation, which in the words also of George Washington, and I quote him again, gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. While some at this moment in time are tempted to blame and divide us in fragile moments like this, we need to come together, not apart. That is the America that we know and that we love. Across religions, races, gender, ethnicities, whatever. We come together and rise and fall as one. It can be hard at moments like this, but it is within us. My home away from home, having served as the United States ambassador, is Berlin. I had the honor of getting the city of Berlin to place a plaque where Ronald Reagan stood and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." A man who stood up and had the bravery to try to find common ground between West Germans and East Germans, and more broadly between the West and the Soviet Union. It was Bobby Kennedy who broke the news of Martin Luther King's death to an African American rally in Indianapolis, Indiana, 2 months and 2 days before he himself was killed. The mayor of Indianapolis asked him not to come. He feared for his security. It was actually Republican mayor and later a distinguished Senator Dick Lugar. His own team told him not to go. But he went. And he went because he believed he could find common ground. And he said 2 things that night. And by the way, Indianapolis, as a result of what he said and his presence, was one of the few, if only, cities in America not to riot that night. And that's the sort of leadership we need. He said something for the only time in his whole life as he was killed himself 2 months later. He said, "My brother too was killed by a white man." Can you imagine that? And then he quoted the Greek philosopher Aeschylus, who said, "In our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." New Jersey's Jewish community is inextricably woven into the fabric of our state. I commit to you now, with a heavy yet firm heart, this fabric will never be rended. May God bless us all. May God bless the great state of New Jersey. And may God bless the United States of America. Shalom.
We call this a solemn observance of mourning and outrage. Just a few words of outrage. What took place yesterday morning in Pittsburgh was not a tragedy. It was not a calamity, not a catastrophe, not a sad and unfortunate event, not a misfortune. It was slaughter. Let's be clear about that. There's never been slaughter in an American synagogue before. The last shooting took place 50 years ago when a rabbi was shot by a mentally ill teenage congregant. Tragic, not the same. Yesterday's slaughter was unique, and the question we must pose is this: was it a coincidence that it took place now? My own answer is an unequivocal no. There was no coincidence. Every measure of anti-Semitic incidents shows a rise in recent years. Every measure of bias incidents shows a rise in recent years. There is no coincidence. When the most important, loudest voice in American life says of a congressman who assaults a journalist, "Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind of guy." When that same voice repeatedly says, "Lock her up," when that same voice, witnessing a march of loud, aggressive Nazis proclaiming blood and soil, Jews will not replace us, and says there are good people on both sides, there is no coincidence. The best definition of anti-Semitism is opposition to Jews as Jews. The Pittsburgh shooter knowingly and deliberately engaged in an act of anti-Semitism. But he was no lone crazy. He acted with the confidence of someone who knew they were part of something bigger than they themselves. And in the current environment, it's easy to imagine how he got to be so confident. There are many elected officials with us this morning, and many who aspire to be elected. We can yell, we can scream, we can cry, and we have and we will. But you're the ones who can actually do something. So here's a very simple message. Do it. If you are not actively opposing the voices that made the shooter feel that he had the license to do what he did, then you are complicit in his acts. If you are not working actively to keep guns out of the wrong hands, you are guilty. Leviticus says, do not stand idly by while your neighbor bleeds. We're bleeding. What are you going to do to staunch the flow? Jews are a family. The slaughter in Pittsburgh reverberates even here. Greg and Pam Adelsheimer grew up at Tree of Life. The rabbi officiated at their wedding. Carter Dutch's brother-in-law's father is the president of the congregation. By lucky coincidence, he was sick yesterday and not in shul. And as we were reminded with Parkland, where so many of us had personal ties, we are a family. You hurt one part of us, the rest of us feel it. It's a kind of tribal moment. You hurt my people, my community, my family, you hurt me. And while this nasty, foul act of anti-Semitism stands on its own, we cannot view it in isolation. It's not only about Jews. We are quite literally in the crosshairs, but so are others. We as a community must take care of ourselves, but we must do our part to take care of everyone assailed by violent bigotry and prejudice. And we must do this through our activism, our generosity, and our love. The more bridges we build, the less we are alone. Words of mourning. This is a sacred space. I feel violated. I mourn the innocents lost. I mourn yesterday's victims. And of those victims, here's my hope. In Hebrew, the word for sky and heaven is the same, shamayim. And in a few weeks, we'll read the beginning of the story of Joseph and his dream of 11 stars in the shamayim. I hope our 11 stars, our 11 souls, are also in shamayim. I hope that they are warm. I hope that they are at peace. I pray that we bask in the glow of the light they shine, and our deeds honor their lives and give meaning to their deaths. May their memories be a blessing.
I'm Cantor Jessica Epstein from B'nai Abraham, and I want to thank all of you for coming today to join your voices with ours. There is a place where Jews go when tragedy strikes. We go to the Psalms. They are our home in tragic times. And today I'd like to share with you a few verses from Psalm 121. It's a song for ascents that can lift us from a low place. I lift up mine eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. The psalmist lifts up his eyes, and our first inclination in times of grief and mourning, when the structures have disappeared from around us, is to look around, maybe seeking help in the natural world. But then we realize there's something more powerful. There's a creative force. There's a God who creates and who sustains us. There is a loving God who cares for us and guides us. This psalmist, this author, is on a journey we all must take, a journey to the ultimate end, a journey of the soul. But what the psalmist reminds us and what we must take away is that our souls do not walk and journey alone. God is our shomer, our guardian, and not just a guardian, but a guardian of Israel. We are worthy of God's love and protection simply because we are part of a bigger people. We are part of a community that has a connection to God which none can sever. God is our parent in this psalm, guiding even our footsteps, stopping the sun and the moon from creating harm on us. Throughout the psalm, God is not distant from us. God is not far. On this very last journey that each soul must take, God is at our side. God is with us when we are at our most vulnerable. May our loved ones, our brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh, their souls are now in God's care. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, and let us say,
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Please rise.
Kedoshim u'tihorim Zohar Harakia Naziri. Et nishmut kol eila shis karnu hayom livraka. Ana malarachavim. Tasdirim besitim kenafaka leolamim. V'titzror b'tzror achayim et nishmotem. V'yanuchu al mishkevotam b'shalom. V'namar Amen.
Before we recite Kaddish, Dov, would you please come up and read the names of those we lost yesterday?
Joyce Feinberg, age 75. Rich Godfrey, age 65. Rose Mallinger, age 97. Jerry Rabinowitz, age 66. Cecil Rosenthal, age 59. His brother David Rosenthal, age 54. Bernice Simon, aged 84. Her husband, Sylvan Simon, aged 86. Daniel Stein, aged 71. Melvin Wax, aged 88. Irving Younger, aged 69. T'eh nishmatam tzorachim.
Yitgadal vayitgadash Shadeh
Amen.
Be'alma tigrach v'ritei
Yamlik Malchutei, L'chayechon v'yomechon, L'chayei T'kol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gan Lau Dizman Kariv Vimru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, L'Elam L'Lamei Amaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitroham v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaneh v'yitala Shmei L'Kudusha B'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shvirata, tushvachata v'nechamata, da'amiram b'yama v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom emrama, v'yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen.
Olot balevav velima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, wolfatei mizrach kadima, ayin lezion Sophia, Onoda Tikvatenu, Atikadat Shokarbayim, Liachakoshi, Learsenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim, Liachakoshi, Learsenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim.
A day of peace and a day of safety to all. Thank you.